There was a time when I honestly believed my heart was already closed. Not because I didn't want to love, but because I had learned how painful it could be to open yourself to someone and discover that they didn't value what you gave them. After enough disappointment, you stop expecting people to stay. You stop explaining what you feel. You build walls, not because you are cold, but because you are trying to protect the last vulnerable part of yourself. I became comfortable behind those walls. I convinced myself that being independent meant never needing anyone. I told myself that emotions could wait, that love could wait, that someday I might feel differently. But deep down, I knew the truth. My heart wasn't empty. It was simply tired. Then she appeared. She didn't come into my life with some dramatic announcement that everything was about to change. It happened quietly. A conversation. A smile. A moment when I realized I was thinking about her long after she had left, and slowly something inside me began to move. What surprised me most was that she never tried to force her way through the walls I had built. She didn't demand that I explain every emotion. She didn't ask me to become vulnerable before I was ready. She simply remained genuine. She listened. She cared. She gave me reasons to lower my guard without ever making me feel weak for having one, and that taught me something important. Sometimes the right person doesn't break down your walls. They make you realize you don't need them anymore. I started noticing little changes in myself. I wanted to talk instead of staying silent. I wanted to share things instead of keeping everything inside. I started imagining a future with someone instead of imagining a future completely on my own. That was difficult for me because opening your heart means accepting uncertainty. You cannot control what another person will do. You cannot guarantee that you will never get hurt. Love requires you to take a risk with something incredibly valuable. Your emotions. But maybe that is exactly what makes love so powerful. You can build a life around avoiding pain, but you may also avoid joy, connection, growth, and the possibility of experiencing something extraordinary. A protected heart may survive, but an open heart gets to truly live. She reminded me of that. She showed me that my past didn't have to control my future. The people who hurt me didn't get to decide whether I would ever love again. My disappointments were experiences, not permanent definitions of who I was. And perhaps that is what she gave me before she ever realized it. She gave me permission to believe again. I thought my heart was closed forever. I thought I had already given everything I had to give. But then she walked into my life, and I discovered something I had forgotten. Sometimes your heart isn't asking to be protected forever. It is asking to be opened by someone who makes you believe it is safe to love again. She didn't just enter my life. She awakened the part of me I thought I had lost forever. There is something powerful about being understood without having to explain every part of yourself. For a long time, I thought silence was simply part of who I was. If something bothered me, I kept it inside. If I was struggling, I handled it alone. If I was afraid, I rarely admitted it. I became very good at looking calm on the outside while carrying an entire conversation inside my head. Most people see silence and assume there is nothing happening. She didn't. She noticed the pauses between my words. She noticed when my smile wasn't completely real. She noticed when I became quiet after something had touched a deeper part of me, and instead of judging me for it, she became curious about the person behind the silence. That changed something in me. She didn't try to force me to talk. She didn't make my quietness a problem that needed to be fixed. She simply gave me space and made it clear that whenever I was ready, she would listen. That kind of patience is rare. We live in a world where everyone wants immediate answers. People want to know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're planning, and why you aren't saying more. But sometimes a person doesn't need another question. Sometimes they need someone who can sit beside them without demanding an explanation. She understood that, and because she understood it, I slowly started revealing pieces of myself that I had kept hidden for years. I began talking about things I normally would have dismissed. I began admitting when something hurt. I began saying, "I'm not okay," without feeling like I had failed. She showed me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it is honesty. The strange thing is, I had spent so much time believing that people would only value me if I appeared strong, successful, confident, and completely in control. But she wasn't looking for a perfect version of me. She wanted the real person underneath all of that. She saw the man behind the silence. And when someone sees you that clearly and still chooses to stay, it changes the way you see yourself. I realized I didn't always have to carry everything alone. I didn't have to turn every emotion into a problem to solve. Some things simply needed to be felt, some fears needed to be spoken, some wounds needed someone to know they existed. Her presence gave me the courage to communicate instead of disappear, to trust instead of constantly protect myself, and to let someone come closer without assuming they would eventually hurt me. That doesn't mean every fear disappeared. It means I finally had a reason to face those fears. And maybe that's what real love does. It doesn't magically remove your imperfections. It gives you enough safety to confront them. It doesn't demand that you become someone else. It helps you become more honest about who you already are. She didn't fall in love with the image I showed the world. She looked beyond it. She saw the ambition, but she also saw the uncertainty. She saw the confidence, but she also saw the doubt. She saw the strength, but she also understood the tiredness behind it. And somehow, being seen that completely didn't scare me anymore. It felt like freedom. Because when someone can hear the silence you've been hiding behind and still choose to understand you, you don't just feel loved. You finally feel seen. After everything I had experienced, I reached a point where I stopped believing that love could actually last. It wasn't that I hated love. I simply stopped trusting it. I had seen how quickly promises could disappear, how easily people could change, and how something that once felt permanent could suddenly become a memory. So I protected myself. I told myself that depending on someone was dangerous. I convinced myself that being alone was easier than being disappointed. If you never expect too much, you never have to deal with the pain of losing too much. At least, that was what I believed. Then she came into my life. She didn't arrive with perfect words or some impossible promise that she would never hurt me. Instead, she showed me something much more valuable: consistency. She was there in the ordinary moments. She listened when I needed to talk. She stayed patient when I struggled to express myself. And little by little, her actions started challenging everything I had convinced myself about love. I began to understand that real love isn't built from one extraordinary moment. It's built from hundreds of ordinary moments where two people continue choosing each other. That realization changed me. I stopped looking for reasons why it couldn't work and started paying attention to why it felt different. I noticed how peaceful I felt around her. I noticed how naturally I wanted to share my thoughts with her. I noticed that I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't preparing myself for the ending while I was still living the beginning. She made me understand that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. There will be disagreements. There will be difficult days. There will be moments when both people are tired, frustrated, or uncertain. But real love isn't measured by how perfect everything looks when life is easy. It's measured by what two people do when life becomes difficult. Do they communicate? Do they listen? Do they forgive? Do they grow? Do they keep choosing each other? She showed me that love can be a partnership instead of a battlefield. It can be a place where two people don't compete against each other, but work together against the problems standing between them. And the more I experienced that, the more I realized how wrong I had been about closing my heart. I thought protecting myself meant refusing to believe again. But she taught me that courage isn't avoiding the possibility of pain. Courage is knowing that pain is possible and still choosing to love. She didn't erase my past. She simply gave my future a different meaning. The disappointments I had experienced no longer felt like proof that love was impossible. They became lessons that helped me recognize something genuine when it finally appeared. And perhaps that's the greatest gift she gave me. She didn't just make me fall in love with her. She made me believe that love itself was still worth believing in. Now, I understand that the right person doesn't need to convince you with 1,000 promises. Sometimes they simply show you, through their actions, that your heart can be safe again. She didn't just bring love back into my life. She made me brave enough to believe in it again. There was a part of me that I had kept hidden for so long that I almost forgot it existed. It wasn't something I talked about. It wasn't something I knew how to explain. It was simply a place inside me where I kept the things that had hurt, the fears I didn't want anyone to see, and the emotions I had convinced myself were better left untouched. I had become good at protecting that place. Whenever life became difficult, I would become more distant. Whenever something hurt me, I would bury it beneath work, ambition, responsibility, or silence. I kept moving because moving forward felt easier than stopping long enough to ask myself what I was actually feeling. And then she came along. What surprised me was that she never tried to force her way into that hidden part of me. She didn't demand answers. She didn't tell me that I needed to change. She simply stayed close enough for me to realize that I didn't have to hide everything anymore. There was something about the way she listened. She wasn't just waiting for her turn to speak. She actually wanted to understand. When I talked, she remembered the small details. When I became quiet, she didn't immediately assume something was wrong with her. When I needed space, she respected it. And when I finally opened up, she treated what I shared with care. That created something I hadn't expected. Trust. Trust is interesting because you can't build it through one conversation. You build it through repetition, through small actions, through keeping promises, through showing someone that their vulnerability won't be used against them. And slowly, I began giving her pieces of myself. First, small pieces, then bigger ones. I started telling her things I normally kept inside. I admitted fears I had hidden behind confidence. I talked about moments that had changed me. I allowed myself to be uncertain without pretending I had every answer. And every time I opened another door, she didn't walk through it and judge what she found. She simply understood. That's when I realized she had reached somewhere inside me that nobody else had been able to reach. Not because she had some magical ability to fix me, but because she created an environment where I didn't feel like I needed fixing. That's an important difference. Sometimes people try to love you by changing you. They see your weaknesses and immediately want to repair them. But sometimes what you really need is someone who can look at those weaknesses and say, "You don't have to hide this from me." She gave me that feeling, and because of that, I began discovering parts of myself I had forgotten. The softer part, the hopeful part, the part that still wanted to believe in something lasting. The part that wanted to give love without constantly calculating the risk. She didn't simply touch my heart. She reminded me that my heart was still capable of feeling deeply. And perhaps that's why her presence became so meaningful. She didn't rescue me from my past. She didn't erase everything that had happened. She simply helped me understand that my past didn't have to control the person I became next. Sometimes the greatest gift another human being can give you isn't an answer. It's a safe place to be honest. She became that place for me, and once I understood that, I knew something had changed forever. She reached the part of my heart I had buried beneath years of silence, and instead of judging what she found, she taught me that it was still worth loving, What changed me most about her was that she never tried to change me. She never walked into my life with a list of things I needed to fix. She never told me I wasn't enough, or that I needed to become someone completely different to deserve her love. Instead, she simply accepted me as I was, and somehow, that acceptance made me want to become better. That's the strange thing about genuine love. When someone constantly tells you to change, you usually become defensive. You start protecting yourself. You start wondering whether you're being loved for who you are or for who someone wants you to become. But when someone believes in you without demanding perfection, something different happens. You begin changing because you want to. Her presence made me look at myself differently. I started noticing the areas of my life where I could grow, not because she demanded it, but because I wanted to become the kind of person who could give her the love she deserved. I wanted to communicate better. I wanted to become more patient. I wanted to listen instead of immediately trying to solve everything. I wanted to become stronger emotionally, not just stronger in the way the world usually defines strength. And the important thing was that she never forced any of it. She simply showed me what was possible. Sometimes the most powerful influence someone can have on your life is simply being an example. You watch the way they treat people. You notice their patience. You notice their kindness. You notice how they handle difficult moments. And without realizing it, you begin asking yourself, can I become better too? That's what happened to me. She didn't make me feel inadequate. She made me feel capable. There is a huge difference. She didn't look at my imperfections and make me ashamed of them. She made me aware that imperfections don't have to be permanent. They can become opportunities for growth. And that changed the way I thought about relationships. I realized that the right person doesn't complete you in the sense that you are somehow broken without them. The right person can inspire you to become more complete within yourself. She didn't become my identity. She became part of the reason I wanted to improve it. That's powerful, because love should not make you smaller. It should not make you afraid to dream. It should not make you abandon the person you are. Real love should give you the courage to become the strongest, wisest, and most authentic version of yourself. And that's exactly what she did. She challenged me without attacking me. She encouraged me without controlling me. She believed in me without demanding that I prove myself every day. And somewhere along the way, I realized that the changes happening inside me were not really about becoming someone she would love. They were about becoming someone I could be proud of. That's when I understood the difference between being changed by someone and being inspired by someone. She didn't rebuild me. She simply helped me see what was already possible inside me. And maybe that's one of the greatest forms of love there is. When someone accepts who you are today, while inspiring you to become even better tomorrow. She never tried to change who I was. She simply loved me so genuinely that becoming a better version of myself became impossible to ignore. For the first time, I began to understand that home isn't always a building, a city, or a place you return to at the end of the day. Sometimes home is a person. Sometimes it's the feeling you experience when you are finally around someone who allows you to stop pretending. That's what she became for me. Before her, I thought peace came from having control over everything. I thought if I could build my own life, solve my own problems, and depend on nobody, then I would always be safe. But there was something missing from that equation. You can build an incredible life and still feel like something inside you is waiting for somewhere to belong. Then I found that feeling with her. Around her, I didn't feel like I had to perform. I didn't have to prove how strong I was. I didn't have to pretend that I had every answer. I could have a difficult day and simply say, "Today was hard." I could be quiet without worrying that my silence would be misunderstood. I could talk about my dreams without feeling ridiculous for wanting more. There was a kind of peace in that. And peace is something you recognize differently after you've spent enough time without it. She became the person I wanted to tell things to first. The good news, the strange thought that crossed my mind, the little victory that nobody else would understand, even the moments that seemed insignificant, somehow became meaningful because I wanted to share them with her. That's when I realized what home really meant. Home isn't necessarily where everything is perfect. It's where you feel safe enough to be imperfect. It's where you can make mistakes without believing that one mistake will destroy everything. It's where disagreement doesn't automatically mean abandonment. It's where two people can have different opinions and still remember that they're on the same side. She gave me that feeling. And because of that, I started looking at love differently. I stopped thinking of love as something that should constantly create excitement and intensity. I began understanding that some of the deepest love exists in quiet moments, the comfortable silence, the familiar smile, the simple conversation at the end of a long day. Those moments don't look extraordinary from the outside, but when you found the right person, they become everything. She didn't just make my heart beat faster. She made my mind quieter. And that distinction matters. There are people who enter your life and create chaos. Then there are people who enter your life and somehow make everything feel more grounded. They don't take away your ambition. They give you a place where you can rest before you go back out and face the world. She became that place for me. And maybe that's why I don't think love is about finding someone who completes your life. It's about finding someone with whom you can share the life you're building without losing yourself in the process. She didn't become my escape from the world. She became the person I wanted beside me while I faced it. That is what made her different. For the first time, love didn't feel like another uncertainty I had to protect myself from. It felt like something I could build upon, something steady, something worth choosing every day. I finally understood that home isn't always where you started. Sometimes, home is the person who makes you feel safe enough to finally stop running. And when I found that feeling in her, I realized I hadn't just found someone to love. I had finally found somewhere my heart could belong. There is something you realize when someone changes the way you see your own heart. You become deeply aware of how precious that change is, and that's where I am now. I don't want to lose what she awakened in me. Before her, I was comfortable being closed off. I knew how to protect myself. I knew how to keep my emotions under control, and how to convince myself that I didn't need anyone. But after she entered my life, I discovered a version of myself that I had almost forgotten existed. I became softer without becoming weaker. I became more open without losing my strength. I became willing to trust again. And I don't want to go backward. That doesn't mean I'm afraid of losing her every second. It means I understand the value of what we've created. When something becomes meaningful, you stop treating it casually. You begin to realize that love isn't something you simply receive. It's something you have a responsibility to protect. I don't want to take her patience for granted. I don't want to assume she'll always understand without me communicating. I don't want to become so comfortable that I stop appreciating the little things she does. Because sometimes relationships don't disappear because love suddenly ends. Sometimes they weaken because people stop paying attention. They stop listening. They stop saying thank you. They stop asking how the other person is really doing. They stop choosing each other in the small moments. I don't want that. I want to remember what it felt like when she first made me believe that opening my heart was safe. I want to remember the conversations that made me realize I could trust again. I want to remember how strange and beautiful it felt to let someone see the parts of me I had spent years hiding. Those memories aren't just memories to me. They're reminders. Reminders of the person I became when I allowed myself to love without constantly preparing for disappointment. And perhaps that's one of the most important things I've learned. When someone awakens something beautiful inside you, your responsibility is not simply to admire it. Your responsibility is to keep it alive. That means choosing honesty when silence would be easier, choosing patience when frustration takes over, choosing forgiveness when pride tells you to walk away, choosing communication when misunderstanding begins to grow, choosing love even when the excitement of the beginning becomes the ordinary rhythm of everyday life, because real love isn't proven only during the extraordinary moments. It's proven on ordinary Tuesdays. It's proven when both people are tired. It's proven when life becomes stressful and neither person feels particularly romantic. It's proven when you have every reason to become distant, but decide instead to reach closer. That's the kind of love I want. I don't want to simply remember what she awakened in me. I want to become the person who protects it. Because she reminded me that my heart could still feel deeply. She reminded me that trust was still possible. She reminded me that vulnerability didn't make me weak. And she gave me something I had stopped searching for. The courage to believe that love could be worth the risk. So no, I don't want to lose that part of myself again. I want to carry it forward. I want to keep growing, keep loving, keep communicating, and keep choosing the person who helped me discover that my heart was never truly closed. I don't want to lose what she awakened in me, because that awakened heart is the most honest version of myself I've ever known. When I look back at everything that happened, I realize the real story was never simply about falling in love. It was about becoming capable of loving again. I spent so much time protecting my heart that I forgot what it felt like to give it freely. Then she came into my life, and somehow, without forcing anything, she made me want to open that door again. And now that my heart is open, I don't want to give her only the easy parts of me. I don't want to love her only when everything is going perfectly. I want to love her when life becomes complicated. I want to be there when she's celebrating something beautiful, but also when she's exhausted, uncertain, or struggling to find the words for what she feels. Because if I've learned anything, it's that love isn't measured by how intensely you feel something in one perfect moment. It's measured by what you're willing to do consistently after that moment is gone. I want to give her honesty. I want her to know what I'm thinking instead of making her guess. I want to communicate when something is wrong rather than disappearing into silence. I want to tell her when I'm afraid instead of pretending that I have everything under control. I want to give her patience, not because she'll always be perfect, but because neither will I. We're both human. We'll misunderstand each other sometimes. We'll have difficult days. We'll say things we wish we had said differently. But I don't want one difficult moment to erase everything beautiful we've built. I want to give her trust. Real trust isn't simply believing that someone will never disappoint you. It's choosing to believe in the relationship even when uncertainty appears. It's allowing someone to be themselves without constantly searching for reasons to doubt them. And most importantly, I want to give her my presence, not just physically being there, but actually being there, listening, paying attention, remembering the little things, celebrating her victories, standing beside her when life becomes difficult, making sure she never has to wonder whether she matters to me, because she opened something inside me that I had spent years protecting. She showed me that vulnerability could be beautiful. She showed me that love could feel like peace instead of fear. She showed me that being deeply connected to another person doesn't mean losing yourself. Sometimes it means discovering yourself more completely. So when I say I want to give her all of my heart, I don't mean I want to lose myself in her. I mean, I want to give her the most honest version of myself, the person who is willing to grow, the person who is willing to listen. The person who is willing to apologize. The person who is willing to keep learning how to love better. The person who doesn't run when things become difficult. Because she didn't just make me feel loved. She made me want to become someone who knows how to love properly. And maybe that's the greatest transformation of all. She didn't simply open my heart so I could feel something again. She opened it so I could finally understand what it means to give without fear. I don't know exactly what every chapter of the future will look like. Nobody does. But I know what I want to carry into those chapters. Her hand in mine, her trust in my heart, and the promise that I will never treat the love she awakened in me as something ordinary. She opened my heart when I thought it was closed forever, and now I want to spend every day proving that the heart she awakened was worth opening.